Hey guys, quick question. How long do you think you'd last in a world where sneezing at the wrong moment could get you burned alive? Where owning a cat makes you suspicious? Where being too good at churning butter is basically a death sentence? Try waking up in Salem, Massachusetts in 1692. You'll be lucky to make it to sunset without someone pointing a finger at you and screaming about how you clearly made a pact with Satan because your bread rose too perfectly this morning. Night. We're not talking about noble witch hunters protecting innocent communities from evil. We're talking about mass hysteria, teenage girls with too much power, and a legal system that makes a coin flip look sophisticated. We're talking about regular people whose biggest crime was probably forgetting to say grace before dinner. So before you wrap yourself in your overpriced blanket made by robots who definitely aren't possessed by demons, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, especially if you're procrastinating work, school, or basic human interaction. I get it. Now dim the lights, maybe put on some ambient background noise, like the gentle hum of your heating system, something that definitely wouldn't exist in 1692 without someone accusing you of summoning hellfire. Because we're about to go back to a time where logic went to die, paranoia was a survival skill, and your neighbor's weird dream about you could literally end your life. Let's get into it. You wake up in Salem Village on a Tuesday morning in March of 1692. The first thing you notice isn't the smell of wood smoke or the sound of roosters. It's the silence. The kind of silence that feels like everyone's holding their breath. You're lying on a straw mattress that's about as comfortable as sleeping on a pile of angry hedgehogs. The walls around you are rough wooden planks that let in every draft, every sound, every reminder that privacy is a luxury you can't afford. Your blanket is a coarse wool thing that probably came from a sheep that died of natural causes 3 winters ago. You sit up. Your back aches immediately. Everything aches. This isn't the gentle morning stiffness of someone who slept wrong on a memory foam mattress. This is the deep, bone-grinding ache of someone whose body has been slowly breaking down from malnutrition, overwork, and sleeping on surfaces that would make a medieval torture device jealous. The room is dim. The only light comes from a single small window covered with oiled paper because glass is for rich people and you're definitely not rich people. You can see shapes moving outside. Shadows that could be neighbors going about their morning routines or could be something else entirely. In Salem in 1692, you never really know. You swing your legs over the side of the bed. Your feet hit the floor and immediately you're reminded why shoes were invented. The floorboards are rough, uneven, and cold enough to make you question every life choice that led you here. You fumble around for your shoes. They're not really shoes in any modern sense. They're more like leather socks with delusions of grandeur. You put them on anyway, because the alternative is worse. You stand up and immediately your stomach starts demanding attention. It's not the pleasant rumble of someone who skipped breakfast because they were running late. It's the hollow, gnawing ache of someone who's been rationing food for months and still running out. Your last meal was yesterday's watery porridge and a crust of bread so hard you could have used it as a weapon. You walk to the window and peer out through the oiled paper. The world outside looks like a painting someone started but never finished. Everything is brown and grey and vaguely threatening. The sky is that particular shade of March gloom that makes you wonder if the sun is just a myth your parents told you to make you feel better about existence. You can see other houses scattered around the village. Most of them look exactly like yours, which is to say they look like someone built them out of leftover lumber and hope. Smoke rises from a few chimneys. People are moving around, going about their daily business of survival and suspicion. But something's different today. You can feel it in the air. It's like the moment before a thunderstorm, when the pressure drops and animals start acting weird. Except this storm isn't made of rain and wind. It's made of fear and accusations, and the kind of mob mentality that turns neighbors into enemies overnight. You hear voices outside. Not the usual morning chatter of people saying hello or complaining about the weather. These voices are hushed, urgent, excited in a way that makes your skin crawl. They're the voices of people sharing gossip that could kill someone. You press your ear to the wall. The wood is thin enough that you can make out words. Saw her talking to herself by the well. Her cow gives more milk than anyone else's. My daughter had nightmares after she walked past their house. Always been strange, if you ask me. You step back from the wall. Your heart is beating faster now. You know what this means. You've heard these conversations before. They always start the same way. Whispers and speculation and perfectly innocent explanations twisted into evidence of supernatural wrongdoing. Someone in Salem village is about to have a very bad day. You just don't know yet that it's going to be you. You walk to the single chair in your room. It's not really a chair so much as a piece of wood shaped like something a human might sit on if they were desperate enough. You sit down anyway and try to think about your day ahead. You're supposed to help with the morning milking. Then you need to check on the vegetable garden that's been struggling to produce anything edible. After that, you have to repair the fence that the neighbor's pig keeps breaking through. It's a simple day, a normal day, the kind of day that should pass without incident. But you can still hear those voices outside, and you know that in Salem in 1692, normal days have a way of becoming nightmares without warning. You stand up and walk to the small mirror hanging on the wall. It's not really a mirror. It's a piece of polished metal that gives you a vague idea of what your face looks like if you squint and use your imagination. What you see isn't encouraging. Your face is gaunt. Your cheekbones are sharp enough to cut glass. Your eyes are sunken and surrounded by dark circles that make you look like you've been dead for a week. Your hair is lank and greasy because bathing regularly is a luxury you can't afford and wouldn't be safe anyway. You look exactly like someone who might make a pact with the devil just to get a decent meal. You look away from the mirror. Self-examination is dangerous when you're already starting to doubt your own innocence. In Salem, self-doubt is just another word for confession. You walk to the door. Your hand hesitates on the wooden latch. Once you open this door, you're committed to facing whatever's waiting outside. You could stay inside. You could pretend to be sick. You could hide under your blanket and hope the world forgets you exist. But hiding makes you look guilty, and looking guilty in Salem in 1692 is the same as being guilty. You lift the latch and open the door. The first thing that hits you is the cold. March in Massachusetts is nature's way of reminding you that winter isn't done with you yet. The air is sharp and bitter and cuts through your thin clothing like it's made of tissue paper. You wrap your arms around yourself, but it doesn't help much. The second thing that hits you is the stairs. There are maybe a dozen people visible in the immediate area. They're all looking at you, not the casual glances of neighbors going about their business. These are the focused, evaluating stares of people who are trying to decide whether you're a threat. You nod to them, try to smile. The smile feels fake on your face, but you do it anyway because not smiling would be worse. A few of them nod back. Others just keep staring. One woman, someone you've known for years, actually takes a step backwards when she sees you. That's when you know for certain that something has changed. Something has shifted in the careful balance of village life, and you're on the wrong side of it. You walk toward the well in the center of the village. It's where everyone gathers to get water and exchange information and pretend they're not constantly evaluating each other for signs of supernatural influence. As you get closer, conversations stop. People turn to look at you. The silence spreads like ripples in a pond. You reach the well and lower the bucket. The rope is rough against your hands. The bucket hits the water with a splash that sounds unnaturally loud in the sudden quiet. You pull it back up, hand over hand, trying to ignore the eyes watching your every movement. You pour the water into your wooden bucket. Some of it spills because your hands are shaking slightly. The water that spills hits the ground and makes a small puddle that reflects the grey sky. Wasteful. Someone mutters behind you. You don't turn around. You know that voice. It belongs to Goodwife Prescott, a woman who's made a career out of disapproving of other people's choices. She's the kind of person who would criticize your technique for drowning. Beg pardon? You say without turning around. I said wasteful. Spilling good water like that. Some might say it's unnatural how clumsy you've become lately. You turn around slowly. Goodwife Prescott is standing there with her arms crossed, surrounded by three other women who are all nodding like they've just heard the most profound truth ever spoken. They're looking at you like you're a bug. They're trying to decide whether to step on. "I'm sorry," you say. "My hands are cold." "Cold hands in March," one of the other women says. "How strange. My hands are quite warm." She holds up her hands as if to prove the point. They're red and chapped from work and weather, but she's right. They don't look cold. They look like the hands of someone who's been working hard and staying warm through honest labor. Your hands, by comparison, look pale and slightly blue around the fingertips. They look like the hands of someone who's been handling things that normal people shouldn't touch. "Perhaps you should go inside," Goodwife Prescott says. "Warm yourself by the fire. We wouldn't want you to catch a chill." There's something in her voice that makes this sound less like concern and more like a suggestion that you remove yourself from public view before you cause any more trouble. You nod and pick up your bucket. The water sloshes as you turn to leave. More spills. You hear someone TSK behind you. As you walk back toward your house, you can hear them resuming their conversation. The voices are still hushed, but they're excited now. They have something new to discuss, something fresh to analyze and dissect and transform into evidence of wrongdoing. You reach your door and push it open. The inside of your house feels like a sanctuary, but you know it's not really safe. Walls can't protect you from accusations. Doors can't keep out suspicion. If they decide you're guilty, your house will become a trap instead of a shelter. You set the bucket down near the fireplace and try to think. You need to understand what's happening. You need to figure out why people are looking at you differently. You need to know who's been talking and what they've been saying. But first, you need to survive the day. You walk to the small table where you keep your meager supplies. There's a loaf of bread that's 3 days old and hard enough to use as a weapon. There's a small piece of cheese that's more green than white. There's a jar of preserves that you've been saving for a special occasion that will probably never come. You break off a piece of bread and gnaw on it. It tastes like disappointment and wood shavings. The cheese is better, but not by much. You eat anyway because starving to death is still worse than being accused of witchcraft. Probably. As you eat, you try to remember the last few days. Has anything unusual happened? Have you done anything that could be interpreted as suspicious? Have you said anything that could be construed as evidence of supernatural knowledge? You remember helping your neighbor Sarah with her sick cow last week. The cow recovered. That's good, right? Helping people should be good. Except when the cow gets better too quickly, people start wondering how you knew what to do. They start wondering if you had help from sources that aren't mentioned in the Bible. You remember commenting on the weather yesterday. You said it felt like rain was coming. It rained that evening. Again, that should be good. Being observant should be a positive trait. Except when your predictions come true too often, people start wondering if you're getting your information from somewhere other than the clouds. You remember lending your neighbor's daughter a book last month. It was a book of herb lore that you inherited from your mother. The girl's mother seemed grateful at the time. But now you're wondering if she's been having second thoughts about letting her daughter read about plants and their properties. Knowledge is dangerous when people are looking for evidence of the supernatural. You finish eating and walk to the window again. The sun is higher now, but the sky is still grey and threatening. More people are moving around outside. You can see small groups gathering and dispersing like flocks of birds that can't decide where to land. You can also see someone walking toward your house. It's Reverend Paris. He's a thin man with sharp features and the kind of eyes that seem to see sin in everything. He's walking with purpose, and behind him are 2 other men you recognize as village elders. They're not walking casually. They're walking like men on official business. Your stomach drops. You know what this means. You've seen this before. These are the men who come to ask questions. These are the men who decide whether your answers are satisfactory or whether you need to be taken somewhere else for more intensive questioning. You step back from the window. Your heart is beating so hard you can hear it in your ears. You look around your small room as if there might be somewhere to hide, but there isn't. There's nowhere to go. No back door, no cellar, no convenient hole in the wall that leads to safety. There's a knock at your door. It's not a gentle knock. It's not the knock of someone who's coming to borrow a cup of sugar or chat about the weather. It's the knock of authority. The knock of people who expect to be let in whether you want them there or not. Open the door. Reverend Paris calls out. His voice carries the weight of divine authority and legal power. We need to speak with you. You walk to the door. Your legs feel like they're made of water. Your hands are shaking so badly you can barely manage the latch. You take a deep breath and try to compose yourself. Looking scared will only make things worse. You open the door. Reverend Paris is standing there with his two companions. They're all looking at you with the same expression. It's not anger exactly. It's not hatred. It's something worse. It's the look of people who have already decided you're guilty and are now just going through the motions of proving it. Good morning, you say. Your voice sounds strange to your own ears. Too high, too shaky, too much like the voice of someone who has something to hide. Good morning, Reverend Paris replies. We've come to ask you some questions. May we come in? It's phrased as a request, but you know it's not really a request. You step aside and let them enter. They file into your small room like judges entering a courtroom. The space immediately feels smaller and more threatening. Reverend Paris looks around your room with obvious disapproval. He's taking inventory of your possessions, looking for evidence of supernatural influence. The book of herb lore on your table suddenly seems like a neon sign advertising your guilt. Please, sit, he says, gesturing to your chair. You sit. He remains standing, which puts him in the position of authority. The other two men position themselves near the door, blocking your only exit. It's a subtle but effective way of making it clear that you're not free to leave. We've been hearing disturbing reports, Reverend Paris begins. Reports of unusual behavior, reports of unnatural occurrences. I don't understand, you say. It's not entirely a lie. You understand what he's implying, but you don't understand why he's implying it about you. Your neighbor's cow was sick last week, one of the other men says. Very sick. Close to death, some say. And yet after you visited, it recovered completely. Remarkably quickly. I gave it some herbs, you say. My mother taught me about healing herbs. Yes, your mother. Reverend Paris's voice takes on a different tone. Your mother, who also had unusual knowledge of plants and their properties. Your mother, who some say had unnatural abilities. Your blood runs cold. Your mother died 5 years ago. She was a gentle woman who knew how to help sick animals and treat minor ailments with herbs. She was also, you're realizing now, exactly the kind of person who would be accused of witchcraft if she were still alive. My mother was a good Christian woman, you say. Of course, Reverend Paris says. We're not suggesting otherwise, but knowledge can be passed down in many ways, and some knowledge comes from sources that are questionable. He picks up the book from your table, opens it to a random page. You can see him reading the entries about various plants and their uses. In the context of this conversation, every word looks suspicious. Interesting reading, he says. Very detailed, very specific. One might wonder where such specific knowledge comes from. From observation, you say, from trial and error, from generations of people learning what works. Or from other sources, one of the other men suggests. Sources that might not be mentioned in proper texts. You know what he's implying. He's implying that your knowledge comes from supernatural sources. He's implying that you've been getting your information from the devil himself. I've never practiced witchcraft, you say. Of course not, Reverend Paris says. We're not accusing you of anything. We're simply trying to understand some unusual occurrences. But you know that's not true. They are accusing you. They're just doing it in a way that allows them to deny they're doing it. They're building a case against you, one innocent question at a time. Tell us about yesterday, the third man says. You mentioned that rain was coming. And indeed, it did rain. How did you know? I looked at the sky, you say. The clouds were dark. The air felt heavy. The air felt heavy. Interesting. Most people wouldn't notice such subtle signs. Most people wouldn't be so sensitive to atmospheric changes. He's turning your perfectly reasonable observation into evidence of supernatural sensitivity. He's making your ability to read weather patterns sound like divination. I've lived here my whole life, you say. You learn to read the signs. Yes, he says, you learn to read signs. The question is, what kinds of signs are you reading? The questions continue for what feels like hours. They ask about your daily routine, your interactions with neighbors, your knowledge of plants and animals. They ask about your dreams, your prayers, your thoughts when you're alone. Every answer you give seems to make things worse. Every innocent explanation becomes evidence of something sinister. Every demonstration of knowledge becomes proof of unnatural ability. They're not trying to find out if you're guilty. They're trying to find ways to prove that you're guilty. They've already decided. This is just the documentation phase. Finally, Reverend Paris closes the book and looks at you directly. We'll be conducting a more thorough investigation, he says. We'll be speaking to your neighbors. We'll be examining your activities more closely. In the meantime, we strongly suggest that you avoid any unusual behavior. He doesn't say what will happen if you don't avoid unusual behavior. He doesn't need to. You both know what happens to people who are found guilty of witchcraft in Salem. They leave without another word. You close the door behind them and lean against it, trying to catch your breath. Your heart is still pounding. Your hands are still shaking. You feel like you've just survived a battle, but you know the war is just beginning. You walk to the window and watch them leave. They're walking slowly, talking among themselves, occasionally glancing back at your house. You can see other people watching them, trying to figure out what just happened. By evening, everyone in Salem Village will know that you've been questioned. They'll know that you're under suspicion. They'll know that associating with you might put them under suspicion too. You're about to discover what it feels like to be completely alone in a community that was supposed to be your support system. You sit down in your chair and try to think. You need a plan. You need to figure out how to prove your innocence. You need to find a way to survive what's coming. But first, you need to understand exactly what you're up against. You've heard about the witch trials in other places. You've heard about the accusations and the trials and the executions. But you've always thought of them as something that happened to other people in other places. You never thought you'd be living through one yourself. Now you're starting to understand how it works. It's not about actual witchcraft. It's about fear and suspicion and the human tendency to blame someone else when things go wrong. It's about finding scapegoats for problems that don't have easy solutions. You're about to become a scapegoat. The rest of the day passes in a blur of anxiety and paranoia. You try to go about your normal routine, but everything feels different now. Every task feels like it might be evidence against you. Every interaction with neighbors feels like a potential trap. You go to milk the cow. The cow gives more milk than usual. That's good, right? Except now you're wondering if someone will interpret that as evidence that you're using supernatural methods to increase the cow's productivity. You work in the garden. The plants you touch seem to perk up slightly. That's normal, right? You're just loosening the soil and removing weeds. Except now you're wondering if someone will notice that your plants are healthier than your neighbor's plants. You repair the fence. The work goes smoothly. The repair is solid and should last for years. That's good craftsmanship, right? Except now you're wondering if someone will think it's suspiciously well done for someone who's supposed to be weak and sickly. Everything you do well becomes evidence against you. Every skill you possess becomes proof of supernatural assistance. Every success becomes a reason to suspect you. As the sun sets, you retreat to your house and bar the door. Not that it will do much good if they decide to come for you, but it makes you feel slightly safer, slightly more in control. You sit by the fireplace and try to eat some dinner. The bread is still hard. The cheese is still questionable. But you eat anyway because you need to keep your strength up. You have a feeling you're going to need it. Outside, you can hear voices. People are still talking, still discussing, still analyzing every detail of your life and finding new reasons to be suspicious. You blow out your candle and lie down on your straw mattress. Sleep doesn't come easily. Every sound outside makes you jump. Every creak of the house makes you wonder if someone is trying to break in. Every moment of quiet makes you wonder if they're gathering outside, preparing to drag you from your bed. You finally drift off sometime after midnight. Your dreams are filled with accusations and trials and crowds of people pointing fingers at you. You wake up several times, heart pounding, unsure whether the voices you're hearing are real or imagined. When morning comes, you're more tired than when you went to bed. You get up and look out the window. The world looks the same as it did yesterday, but something fundamental has changed. You're no longer a member of the community. You're a suspect. You're someone to be watched and evaluated and possibly eliminated. You open your door and step outside. The morning air is cold and sharp. Your breath forms small clouds that dissipate quickly in the wind. You can see other people moving around, but no one makes eye contact. No one nods or waves. No one acknowledges your existence. You've become invisible, which is almost worse than being the center of attention. You walk to the well to get water. The same group of women is there, having the same hushed conversations, but when they see you coming, they stop talking entirely. They step aside to let you pass. They watch you draw water with the same fascination they might show for a dangerous animal. You can feel their eyes on your back as you walk away. You can hear them resume their conversation as soon as you're out of earshot. They're talking about you. They're adding today's observations to yesterday's evidence. You're building a case against yourself just by existing. You return to your house and close the door. You sit at your table and try to think of a way out of this situation. You could leave Salem. You could pack up your few possessions and walk away. Find another town. Start over. But leaving would be seen as an admission of guilt. And even if you did leave, the accusations would follow you. Word travels fast in Massachusetts. By the time you reached another town, they'd already know you were a suspected witch. You could try to prove your innocence. You could submit to whatever tests they wanted to perform. You could answer all their questions and hope that your honesty would be enough. But you've already seen how that works. Every honest answer becomes evidence of guilt. Every demonstration of innocence becomes proof of supernatural cleverness. You could try to find allies. You could reach out to neighbors who might still trust you. You could try to build a defense based on character witnesses and community support. But you've already seen how quickly people turn on each other when witchcraft is involved. Your allies today could be your accusers tomorrow. You're trapped. There's no way out that doesn't involve risk. There's no safe choice. There's no path that guarantees survival. You're beginning to understand why so many people confess to witchcraft even when they're innocent. Confession is the only option that offers even a slim chance of survival. Denial just makes the torture last longer. A knock at your door interrupts your thoughts. It's a different knock this time, softer, more hesitant, like someone who's not sure they should be there. You open the door cautiously. It's Sarah, your neighbor whose cow you helped last week. She's standing there with her arms wrapped around herself, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. "May I come in?" she asks. You step aside to let her enter. She's one of the few people who's still willing to be seen talking to you. You're grateful for any human contact, even if it might be dangerous for both of you. She sits down at your table and looks around your room. She's seeing it differently now. She's looking for signs of witchcraft. She can't help it. Everyone in Salem is doing it. "I wanted to thank you again," she says finally, "for helping with the cow. She's still doing well." "I'm glad," you say. "I also wanted to ask you something." She pauses. "The herbs you used, where did you learn about them?" Your heart sinks. Even Sarah, who seemed grateful for your help, is now questioning your methods. Even she's starting to wonder if your knowledge comes from supernatural sources. "My mother taught me," you say. "Your mother?" Sarah nods slowly. "Yes, I remember your mother. She was knowledgeable." The way she says it makes it sound like an accusation. Knowledge has become suspicious. Competence has become evidence of guilt. "Sarah," you say carefully, "what are people saying about me?" She looks uncomfortable. She fidgets with her hands and avoids your eyes. "People are concerned," she says finally. "They're saying that you've been different lately. that you seem to know things you shouldn't know, that you're too good at helping with problems. Too good at helping? You repeat. Yes. It's strange, isn't it? But people are wondering how you always seem to know exactly what to do, how you always seem to have the right answer, how problems seem to solve themselves when you're involved. You stare at her. She's describing basic competence as if it's a supernatural ability. She's making common sense sound like divination. Sarah, you say, those are just skills, things I learned from experience, things anyone could learn. Could they? She asks. Could anyone learn to read the weather like you do? Could anyone learn to heal animals like you do? Could anyone learn to make things grow like you do? Yes, you want to say. Anyone could learn these things if they paid attention and practiced and cared about the results, but you can see from her expression that she doesn't believe that. She's convinced that your abilities are unnatural. I should go, she says, standing up. I shouldn't be here. People might think. She doesn't finish the sentence. She doesn't need to. People might think she's associating with a witch. People might think she's been influenced by you. People might think she's guilty by association. She leaves without another word. You close the door behind her and lean against it. You've just lost your last ally. You're completely alone now. The rest of the week passes in a haze of isolation and fear. People cross the street to avoid you. Conversations stop when you approach. Children are pulled inside when you walk by. You try to maintain your normal routine, but everything feels hollow. You milk the cow, but no one wants to buy the milk. You work in the garden, but no one asks for your help with their plants. You repair things around your house, but no one asks you to repair their things. You're being systematically cut off from the community. You're being starved of human contact and economic opportunity. You're being slowly strangled by suspicion and fear. And then, on a Friday morning, they come for you. You're sitting by your fireplace, trying to eat a breakfast of stale bread and questionable cheese, when you hear the footsteps outside. Not the footsteps of one person, but many. The sound of a group moving with purpose. You look out the window. There are at least 20 people approaching your house. Men and women, young and old, all walking together with the same grim expression. Some of them are carrying ropes. Others are carrying sticks. All of them are looking at your house like it's a nest of vipers that needs to be eliminated. At the front of the group is Reverend Paris. Behind him are the two men who questioned you before. Behind them are neighbors you've known for years. People you've helped, people you've trusted, people who are now convinced that you're a danger to their community. You step back from the window. Your heart is beating so hard you can barely think. You look around your small room, searching for somewhere to hide, but there's nowhere to go. You're trapped. There's a pounding at your door. Not knocking, pounding. The sound of people who don't intend to wait for permission to enter. Open the door, Reverend Paris shouts. In the name of God and the law, open the door. You know that if you don't open it, they'll break it down. You know that resistance will only make things worse. You know that you're out of options. You walk to the door with legs that feel like they're made of lead. Your hands are shaking so badly you can barely manage the latch. You take a deep breath and try to prepare yourself for what's coming. You open the door. The crowd surges forward immediately. Hands grab your arms, your shoulders, your clothes. You're pulled out of your house and into the street before you can even think about resisting. You are accused of witchcraft. Reverend Paris announces in a voice loud enough for everyone to hear. You are accused of making a pact with Satan. You are accused of using supernatural powers to harm your neighbors. That's not true, you say, but your voice is lost in the noise of the crowd. You will be taken for examination, he continues. You will be questioned under oath. You will be given the opportunity to confess your sins and ask for God's forgiveness. They bind your hands behind your back with rough rope that cuts into your skin. They push you forward, forcing you to walk in the direction of the village center. The crowd follows, growing larger as more people join to see what's happening. You're being paraded through the streets like a captured enemy. Children point at you. Adults mutter prayers. Someone spits at your feet. You try to maintain your dignity, but it's impossible. You're stumbling over your own feet. Your clothes are torn. Your hair is coming loose from its pins. You look exactly like what they want you to look like. A dangerous person who deserves whatever's coming to her. They take you to the meeting house. It's a large wooden building that serves as both church and courthouse. Inside, it's dim and cold, and filled with the smell of old wood and older fears. They push you into a chair at the front of the room. Your hands are still bound behind your back. Your shoulders are already aching from the position. This is just the beginning. The room fills with people. Everyone in Salem village seems to be here. They're all staring at you with the same mixture of fear and fascination. They're all waiting to see what happens next. Reverend Parris takes his place at a table facing you. The other men sit beside him. They have papers and pens and the authority of God and law on their side. You are accused of witchcraft. Reverend Parris begins. How do you plead? Not guilty, you say. Your voice sounds small and weak in the large room. Not guilty, he repeats. Very well, we shall examine the evidence. The first witness is called forward. It's Goodwife Prescott, the woman from the well. She approaches the table with obvious satisfaction. She's been waiting for this moment. Tell us what you observed, Reverend Parris says. I observed unnatural behavior, she says. Wasteful behavior, clumsy behavior that seemed calculated, as if she wanted to spill the water, as if she was performing some kind of ritual. You want to laugh. The idea that spilling water because your hands were cold could be interpreted as a ritual is so absurd that it would be funny if it weren't determining whether you live or die. But you know that laughing would only make things worse. Laughter would be seen as evidence of your supernatural arrogance. I was cold, you say. My hands were numb. Cold hands in March, Goodwife Prescott says triumphantly. How unnatural. How suspicious. The next witness is called forward. It's Thomas Miller, a man whose fence you repaired last month. He walks to the front of the room with obvious reluctance. He doesn't want to be here, but he's been compelled to testify. Tell us about the fence repair, Reverend Parris says. She fixed it, Thomas says quietly. It was broken and she fixed it. How long did the repair take? About an hour. Reverend Parris makes a note. And how long would such a repair normally take? Thomas shifts uncomfortably. Maybe 3 or 4 hours. 3 or 4 hours. But she completed it in 1 hour. How do you explain this remarkable efficiency? She's good with her hands, Thomas says. She knows what she's doing. Yes, she knows what she's doing. The question is, how does she know? Where does this knowledge come from? Thomas doesn't answer. He looks miserable. You can see that he doesn't want to be part of this, but he's trapped just like you are. If he defends you too strongly, he might find himself accused as well. More witnesses are called. Each one adds another piece to the case against you. The woman whose daughter had nightmares after walking past your house. The man whose crops grew poorly while yours flourished. The child who claims you looked at her strangely and made her feel scared. Every interaction you've had with your neighbors is being re-examined and reinterpreted. Every kindness is transformed into manipulation. Every success is evidence of supernatural assistance. Every moment of competence becomes proof of guilt. Let us examine the accused more closely. Reverend Parris says after the witnesses have finished. 2 men approach you. They untie the ropes around your hands and order you to stand. Your shoulders scream in protest as blood flow returns to your arms. Remove your outer garments, one of them says. You know what this is. They're going to search your body for evidence of witchcraft. They're looking for marks that might be where the devil touched you. They're looking for unusual moles or scars or blemishes that could be interpreted as supernatural signs. You have no choice but to comply. Refusing would be seen as evidence of guilt. You remove your outer dress with shaking hands. You're left standing in your undergarments in front of the entire village. The examination is humiliating and thorough. They examine every inch of your exposed skin. They poke and prod at every mark they find. A small scar from a childhood accident becomes evidence of a devil's mark. A birthmark on your shoulder becomes proof of supernatural influence. Here, one of the examiners says, pointing to a small mole on your arm. This mark is unusual. It appears to be insensitive to pain. He pricks it with a needle. You flinch slightly, but not as much as he expects. The mole is in a spot where the skin is naturally less sensitive. It's perfectly normal. But normal isn't what they're looking for. Insensitive to pain, Reverend Paris notes, a clear sign of supernatural influence. They allow you to put your dress back on. Your hands are bound again. You're forced to sit while they discuss what they've found. The evidence is clear, Reverend Paris announces. Multiple witnesses have testified to unnatural behavior. Physical examination has revealed supernatural marks. The accused displays knowledge and abilities that exceed normal human capacity. I'm innocent, you say again. Your voice is hoarse now. You've been sitting here for hours. I've never practiced witchcraft. I've never made any pact with the devil. Yet the evidence suggests otherwise, he replies. However, there is still hope for your soul. Confession can bring redemption. Acknowledgement of your sins can lead to forgiveness. You understand what he's offering. Confess to witchcraft and you might live. Continue to maintain your innocence and you will certainly die. It's not really a choice. It's an ultimatum disguised as mercy. But confessing to something you didn't do feels like dying anyway. It feels like giving up everything you are and everything you believe. It feels like letting them win. I have nothing to confess, you say. Nothing? Reverend Paris leans forward. Nothing at all? No moments of weakness? No times when you might have been tempted by dark forces? No occasions when you might have used knowledge that came from questionable sources? He's giving you chances to confess to lesser charges. He's offering you ways to admit guilt without fully condemning yourself. But you know that any confession will be used against you. Any admission of wrongdoing will be twisted into evidence of greater crimes. I am innocent, you say. Very well. His voice hardens. If you will not confess willingly, we will be forced to use other methods to determine the truth. You know what other methods means. It means torture. It means techniques designed to extract confessions from people who might otherwise maintain their innocence. It means pain applied systematically until you're willing to say anything to make it stop. Take her to the holding cell, Reverend Paris orders. We will continue this examination tomorrow. Strong hands grab your arms again. You're pulled to your feet and dragged from the meeting house. The crowd follows, shouting and jeering. Someone throws a stone that hits your shoulder. Someone else calls you a servant of Satan. The holding cell is in the basement of the constable's house. It's a small room with stone walls and no windows. The only light comes from a single candle that the constable carries. The air is damp and cold and smells like fear and desperation. They push you inside and lock the heavy wooden door. You hear their footsteps retreating up the stairs. You hear the outer door slam shut. You're alone in the darkness with nothing but your thoughts and your terror. You sit on the single bench that serves as both chair and bed. The wood is rough and uncomfortable. Your bound hands make it impossible to find a comfortable position. Your shoulders are screaming in pain. Your wrists are raw from the ropes. But the physical discomfort is nothing compared to the mental anguish. You keep replaying the day's events in your mind. You keep thinking about the witnesses and their testimony. You keep wondering how people you've known for years could turn on you so completely. You understand now that this isn't really about witchcraft. It's about fear and the human need to blame someone when things go wrong. It's about finding scapegoats for problems that don't have easy solutions. It's about the dangerous power of mob mentality and mass hysteria. You're not being punished for practicing witchcraft. You're being punished for being different, for being competent, for knowing things that other people don't know, for succeeding when others fail. In Salem in 1692, being exceptional is the same as being guilty. Hours pass. You can't tell how many because there's no way to measure time in the windowless cell. Your body aches from sitting in the same position. Your throat is dry from thirst. Your stomach is empty and cramping from hunger. You try to sleep, but sleep is impossible. Every time you close your eyes, you see the faces of your accusers. You hear their voices describing your supposed crimes. You feel their hands examining your body for evidence of supernatural influence. You think about your mother and wonder if she faced something like this before she died. You think about all the women throughout history who have been accused of witchcraft simply for being knowledgeable or independent or threatening to male authority. You think about the irony of being accused of supernatural powers when you've never felt more powerless in your life. Finally, you hear footsteps on the stairs. The door opens and the constable enters with his candle. Behind him is Reverend Paris, and another man you don't recognize. The stranger is carrying a leather bag that makes your blood run cold. "Good morning," Reverend Paris says. "I trust you've had time to think about your situation." "I have nothing new to say," you reply. Your voice sounds strange after hours of silence. "That's unfortunate," he says, "because we have some new questions for you." The stranger opens his leather bag and begins removing instruments. You recognize some of them from descriptions you've heard whispered in dark corners. Tools designed to cause pain without causing death. Tools designed to break the will without breaking the body. These are specialized instruments, Reverend Paris explains, designed to help us determine the truth when normal questioning proves insufficient. They've been blessed by the church and sanctified for use in rooting out evil. The man begins arranging the instruments on a small table. Each one looks more terrifying than the last. Some are designed to crush fingers or toes. Others are designed to stretch joints beyond their natural limits. All of them are designed to cause agony. "Last chance," Reverend Paris says. "Will you confess your crimes and seek redemption, or must we resort to more aggressive methods of inquiry?" You look at the instruments. You look at the men who are preparing to use them on you. You look at your bound hands and realize that you're completely helpless. You think about confessing. You think about telling them whatever they want to hear. You think about ending this nightmare by giving up your integrity and admitting to crimes you never committed. But something inside you rebels against the idea. Some stubborn core of self refuses to surrender. Some essential part of your identity refuses to be broken. "I am innocent," you say. The man with the instruments nods as if he expected this answer. He selects a device that looks like metal clamps connected by screws. "You know what it's for. You know what's about to happen. Place your hand on the table," he says. You don't move. You can't move. Your body is frozen with terror. "Place your hand on the table," he repeats, "or we will place it there for you." You know that resistance is useless. You know that they'll force you to comply whether you cooperate or not. You slowly extend your hand and place it on the rough wooden surface. The man positions the device around your fingers. The metal is cold against your skin. You can feel the screws pressing against the sides of your fingers, not quite tight enough to cause pain yet. "Confess," Reverend Paris says. "Admit your crimes, and this will end." "I have no crimes to admit," you say. The man turns one of the screws. The pressure increases. Your fingers are being slowly compressed. The pain starts as a dull ache and quickly becomes sharp and stabbing. "Confess," Reverend Paris repeats. You grit your teeth and try not to cry out. The pain is getting worse. You can feel your bones being compressed. You can feel your joints being stressed beyond their limits. The man turns the screw again. The pain explodes through your hand and up your arm. You can't help yourself. You scream. "Confess," Reverend Paris says again. His voice is calm and patient. He's prepared to do this all day if necessary. You want to confess. Every nerve in your body is screaming at you to say whatever they want to hear. Every instinct is telling you to end this agony by giving them what they want. But you know that confessing won't really end anything. It will just move you from the torture phase to the execution phase. They're not trying to save your soul. They're trying to extract a confession that will justify killing you. "I am innocent," you gasp through the pain. The man turns the screw again. You scream again. The pain is beyond anything you've ever experienced. It's beyond anything you thought was possible. Your entire world has been reduced to the agony in your hand. "Perhaps we should try a different approach," Reverend Paris says after several more turns of the screw. The man releases the pressure. Your hand is freed from the device, but the relief is only temporary. You can see that your fingers are already swelling. Some of them might be broken. Let's discuss your mother, Reverend Paris says. Tell us about her unusual abilities. She had no unusual abilities, you say. Your voice is shaky from the pain and shock. Yet she knew things. She could heal animals. She could predict weather. She could make plants grow in poor soil. Those aren't supernatural abilities. Those are skills learned from whom? From experience, from observation, from her mother and her mother's mother. Yes, a family tradition of unusual knowledge. He's trying to establish a pattern of witchcraft running through your family line. He's trying to suggest that you inherited your supposed supernatural abilities from generations of witches. There's nothing unusual about learning from your elders, you say, unless what they're teaching comes from questionable sources. The man with the instrument selects a different device. This one looks like a small vise designed to fit around a single finger. The implications are clear. Your mother's knowledge was remarkably specific. Reverend Paris continues. She knew exactly which herbs to use for which ailments. She knew precisely when to plant crops for maximum yield. She knew exactly how to treat sick animals. She learned by trial and error. Or she had supernatural guidance. The man positions the new device around your index finger. The pressure starts immediately. This instrument is designed to focus all its force on a single digit. The pain is more intense and concentrated than the previous device. Where did your mother's knowledge come from? Reverend Paris asks. You can't answer. The pain is too intense. Your finger feels like it's being crushed to powder. You can hear yourself making sounds that don't quite qualify as words. Answer the question, he says. You try to speak but only manage to make choking sounds. The pain is affecting your ability to think clearly. Your vision is starting to blur. Your whole body is shaking. From books, you finally manage to gasp. What books? Herb books, farm almanacs, medical texts. Where did she get these books? I don't know. The pressure increases. Your finger feels like it might actually break. You wonder if that's the goal. You wonder if they're trying to cripple you permanently as well as extract a confession. Where did she get the books? He repeats. I don't know, you scream. She had them when I was born. I don't know where they came from. Think harder. The pressure increases again. You're beyond screaming now. You're making sounds that don't seem human, sounds that come from a place deeper than conscious thought. Perhaps they were gifts, Reverend Paris suggests. Perhaps someone gave them to her. Someone who wanted her to have certain knowledge. Someone who wanted her to pass that knowledge to her daughter. You understand what he's implying. He's suggesting that the devil gave your mother books in exchange for her soul. He's suggesting that she made a pact with supernatural forces, and that you've inherited both the knowledge and the obligation. No, you gasp. She bought them, or borrowed them, or found them. Found them where? I don't know. The pain continues. Your finger has gone numb now, which is somehow worse than the pain. You can't feel it anymore, which means it might be permanently damaged. Let me help you remember, Reverend Paris says. Your mother was seen talking to strangers, people who came through town and left quickly, people who didn't stay long enough for anyone to get to know them, people who might have been more than they appeared. She talked to everyone, you say. She was friendly. Friendly with strangers who appeared and disappeared mysteriously, strangers who might have been supernatural beings in disguise. The interrogation continues for hours. They alternate between different instruments and different questions. They torture your body while simultaneously trying to confuse your mind. They're trying to break you down physically and mentally until you're willing to confess to anything. They ask about your daily routines and find supernatural significance in every detail. They ask about your dreams and interpret every image as communication from dark forces. They ask about your thoughts and treat every moment of doubt or fear as evidence of guilty knowledge. By the end of the session, you can barely speak. Your hands are swollen and possibly broken. Your arms are numb from being bound behind your back for so long. Your mind is foggy from pain and exhaustion. But you haven't confessed. You've maintained your innocence despite everything they've done to you. You've refused to give them the satisfaction of breaking your will. We'll continue tomorrow, Reverend Paris says as they prepare to leave. Perhaps a night of reflection will help you see the wisdom of confession. They leave you alone in the cell again. This time, they don't bother to bind your hands. Your injuries make it impossible for you to escape even if the door were unlocked. You huddle on the bench and try to assess the damage. Your fingers are swollen to twice their normal size. Some of them won't bend properly. You suspect that several bones are broken. Your arms ache from being bound for so long. Your shoulders feel like they've been dislocated and put back together incorrectly. But you're still alive. You're still conscious. You're still yourself. You know that tomorrow will be worse. You know that they'll escalate their methods. You know that they have instruments designed to cause even more pain than what you've already experienced. You also know that you probably won't survive many more sessions like today's. Your body has limits. Your mind has breaking points. Eventually, they'll find a combination of pain and pressure that will make you say anything they want to hear. But for now, in this moment, you're still holding on to your integrity. You're still refusing to confess to crimes you didn't commit. You're still fighting back in the only way available to you. As the hours pass, you drift in and out of consciousness. The pain makes it impossible to sleep properly, but exhaustion eventually overwhelms even agony. You have strange, fevered dreams where you're running through forests being chased by shadows with human faces. You dream about your mother. She's standing in a field of herbs, teaching you about their properties. But in the dream, the plants have eyes, and they're watching you with suspicious expressions. The knowledge she's sharing sounds sinister instead of helpful. You dream about your neighbors. They're all sitting in judgment of you, but their faces keep changing. Sometimes they look like people you've known for years. Sometimes they look like demons with too many teeth. You dream about escape. You're running through the woods, free of ropes and cells and accusations. But no matter how far you run, you can hear voices behind you shouting about witchcraft and Satan and the need for justice. You wake up to the sound of footsteps on the stairs. Morning has come, though you have no way of knowing what time it is. Your body feels worse than yesterday. The swelling in your hands has increased. The pain has settled into a constant throb that makes it hard to think about anything else. The door opens. Reverend Paris enters with the same man as yesterday. Behind them is someone new, a woman you recognize as the village midwife. She's carrying a bag of what look like medical supplies. "Good morning," Reverend Paris says. "I trust you've had time to reconsider your position." "My position hasn't changed," you say. Your voice is barely more than a whisper. "That's unfortunate, because today we're going to try a different approach." The midwife sets down her bag and begins removing items: needles, pins, small knives, bottles of liquid that could be anything from alcohol to acid. "These are specialized tools for examining suspected witches," Reverend Paris explains. "They're designed to test for supernatural influence in ways that ordinary torture cannot." You know what this means. They're going to perform tests that are designed to prove guilt regardless of the results. They're going to hurt you in ways that will be interpreted as evidence against you no matter how you react. "We're going to test your sensitivity to pain," the midwife says. "Witches are known to have unnatural tolerance for suffering. If you feel pain normally, it suggests innocence. If you don't feel pain, it proves guilt. It's a perfect trap. If you scream, you're proving that you're human. If you don't scream, you're proving that you're supernatural. Either way, they can interpret the results however they want. We're also going to test your ability to cry," she continues. "Witches are known to be unable to shed real tears. If you cry, it might suggest innocence. If you don't cry, it proves guilt. Another perfect trap. They're going to cause you so much pain that crying becomes impossible, then use your inability to cry as evidence against you. And we're going to test your reaction to holy symbols," Reverend Paris adds. Witches are known to be unable to look upon crosses or hear scripture without showing signs of distress. A third trap. If you react badly to religious symbols, it proves you're evil. If you don't react badly, it proves you're using supernatural powers to hide your true nature. They begin with the needle tests. The midwife selects a long, thin needle and approaches you with obvious satisfaction. She's been waiting for this opportunity. She's one of the people who's convinced that you're guilty and is eager to prove it. She starts with your arms. She pricks the skin in various places, watching carefully for your reactions. When you flinch or cry out, she makes notes. When you don't react as strongly as she expects, she makes different notes. Interesting, she says after several minutes. Some areas seem more sensitive than others. This is consistent with supernatural influence affecting certain parts of the body while leaving others normal. She's finding patterns that aren't there. She's interpreting normal variations in skin sensitivity as evidence of witchcraft. There's no way to pass this test, because the test is designed to prove guilt regardless of the results. The needle testing continues for what feels like hours. She pricks every inch of exposed skin. She pays special attention to areas where you don't react as strongly, convinced that these are supernatural dead zones where the devil has touched you. Now we test your reaction to pain, Reverend Parris says. The man with the instruments approaches. Today he's selected something that looks like a small brazier with metal implements heating inside it. You know what this means. They're going to burn you, and watch how you react. Witches are known to have unnatural tolerance for fire, he explains. Because they're protected by their master, they don't suffer from burns the way normal people do. He removes a glowing metal rod from the brazier. The tip is orange hot and radiating heat that you can feel from several feet away. He approaches you slowly, giving you time to anticipate what's coming. Confess now, and we won't need to proceed, Reverend Parris offers. You want to confess. Every rational part of your mind is screaming at you to say whatever they want to hear. The anticipation of the burn is almost worse than the actual pain will be. But you know that confessing won't save you. It will only change the method of your execution. They're not trying to redeem your soul. They're trying to justify killing you. I am innocent, you whisper. The man touches the hot metal to your arm. The pain is immediate and intense. It's different from the crushing pain of yesterday. This is pure fire burning through your flesh. You can smell your own skin burning. You can hear it sizzling. You scream. You can't help it. The pain is beyond anything your nervous system was designed to handle. You scream until your throat is raw and you have no breath left. She feels pain, the midwife notes. But notice how she screams. It's not the scream of someone truly suffering. It's theatrical, performed. She's interpreting your genuine agony as acting. She's convinced that you're faking your pain response to appear innocent. There's literally nothing you can do that won't be used as evidence against you. They burn you in several places. Each time, your reaction is analyzed and found suspicious. When you scream too much, it's evidence that you're overacting. When you don't scream enough, it's evidence that you're supernaturally protected. Now we test your ability to cry, the midwife says. She approaches with a small bottle of liquid. You can smell it from several feet away. It's some kind of acid or irritant designed to force tears from your eyes. Witches cannot shed real tears, she explains. The devil takes away their ability to show genuine emotion. If you can cry real tears, it might suggest innocence. She tips a few drops of the liquid into your eyes. The burning is immediate and intense. It's like having fire poured directly onto your eyeballs. Your eyes immediately start producing tears in response to the chemical irritation. She's crying, the midwife observes. But look closely at the tears. Are they real tears of repentance? Or are they false tears designed to deceive us? She examines your tears as if she can determine their authenticity through visual inspection. She's looking for differences that don't exist. She's trying to find supernatural qualities in perfectly normal bodily functions. The tears appear genuine, she admits reluctantly, but this could be evidence of sophisticated deception, Advanced witches are known to be able to produce false tears that appear real. You can't win. Every piece of evidence in your favor is reinterpreted as evidence of greater guilt. Every sign of innocence becomes proof of advanced supernatural cunning. Finally, we test your reaction to holy symbols, Reverend Paris says. He produces a wooden cross and holds it up in front of your face. You look at it without flinching. It's a piece of carved wood. It has no power to hurt you because you've done nothing wrong. She shows no fear of the cross, he notes. This could indicate innocence, or it could indicate that she's using supernatural powers to suppress her natural reaction to holy objects. He begins reciting scripture. You listen without showing distress, because the words are familiar and comforting. They're words you've heard in church every Sunday for your entire life. She shows no distress at hearing God's word, he observes. Again, this could indicate innocence, or it could indicate that she's using demonic powers to shield herself from the truth of Scripture. Every test produces results that can be interpreted either way. Every piece of evidence can be spun to support their predetermined conclusion. They're not trying to determine your guilt or innocence. They're trying to create a record that will justify the decision they've already made. The testing continues for most of the day. They burn you in new places. They prick you with needles in patterns that supposedly reveal supernatural influence. They force you to handle religious objects while watching for signs of supernatural distress. By the end, you're barely conscious. The combination of pain, exhaustion, and blood loss has pushed you to the edge of survival. Your body is covered with burns and needle marks. Your hands are still swollen from yesterday's torture. Your mind is starting to disconnect from reality as a defense mechanism. The evidence is clear, Reverend Paris announces. The accused shows all the signs of supernatural influence. Her reactions to pain are unnatural. Her tears appear false. Her lack of distress at holy symbols indicates demonic protection. "I'm innocent," you whisper. It's all you can manage to say. "Innocence is no longer a possibility," he replies. "The question now is whether you will confess and seek redemption, or whether you will maintain your lies until the end." They leave you alone again. This time, you don't even try to assess your injuries. You just lie on the bench and try to remain conscious. Your body has been pushed beyond its limits. Your mind is starting to fracture under the stress. You think about death. For the first time, it seems like it might be a relief. The pain would end. The fear would end. The humiliation would end. You would finally be free of this nightmare. But you also think about justice, about truth, about the principle that innocence should matter. If you die maintaining your innocence, maybe someone someday will realize that this whole process was wrong. Maybe your death will serve as a warning about the dangers of mass hysteria and judicial torture. Or maybe no one will care. Maybe your death will just be one more entry in the official record of witches executed for the protection of the community. You drift in and out of consciousness as the night passes. Your dreams are fragmented and disturbing. You see faces of your accusers transformed into demons. You see yourself burning at the stake while crowds cheer. You see your mother reaching out to you from some impossible distance. When morning comes, you can barely open your eyes. The swelling from yesterday's chemical burn has made your vision blurry. Your body feels like it's been broken and reassembled incorrectly. But you're still alive, still conscious, still yourself. The door opens. This time, it's just Reverend Paris. He's carrying a piece of paper and a quill pen. He sits down on a small stool across from you and spreads the paper on his knee. "I've written out a confession," he says. "All you need to do is make your mark at the bottom. Or if you can still write, you can sign your name." You look at the paper through your swollen eyes. You can't read the words clearly, but you can guess what they say. Probably something about making a pact with Satan. Something about using supernatural powers to harm your neighbors. Something about being sorry for your crimes and begging for God's forgiveness. "If you sign this," he continues, "the torture will end. You'll be held in prison until your execution, but there will be no more interrogation, no more testing, no more pain." It's a tempting offer, an end to the suffering in exchange for admitting to crimes you didn't commit, a chance to die with some dignity instead of being tortured to death slowly. What happens if I don't sign? You ask. Then we continue. We have many more tests to perform, many more ways to extract the truth. We can continue for weeks if necessary. You look at him carefully. He seems tired, worn down by the process of systematically destroying another human being. You wonder if he actually believes you're guilty, or if he's just going through the motions of a system that demands confessions regardless of truth. I won't sign, you say. He nods, as if he expected this answer. He folds the paper and puts it back in his pocket. Then we continue, he says. But something in his voice suggests that he's not entirely disappointed by your refusal. Maybe some part of him respects your commitment to truth. Maybe some part of him knows that this whole process is wrong. Or maybe you're just imagining compassion where none exists. The torture resumes. New instruments, new tests, new ways to cause pain, while collecting evidence that can be interpreted as proof of guilt. Your body continues to break down. Your mind continues to fragment. But some essential core of yourself refuses to surrender. Days pass, or maybe weeks. Time becomes meaningless when every moment is focused on survival. You stop trying to count the sessions or measure the intervals between them. You just endure. They bring in new experts. People from other towns who claim to have experience identifying witches. Each one has their own preferred methods. Each one finds new evidence of your guilt in your reactions to their tests. They bring in other accused witches. People you know from the village who have been caught up in the expanding web of accusations. Some of them have confessed. Others maintain their innocence. All of them look like they've been through the same systematic destruction that you're experiencing. You learn that the hysteria is spreading. More people are being accused. More people are being arrested. More people are being tortured into confessions. The initial accusations by a few young girls have grown into a full-scale witch hunt that's consuming the entire community. You also learn that some people are speaking out against the trials. Some voices of reason are questioning the methods being used. Some people are starting to doubt whether the accused are actually guilty of anything. But these voices are few, and they're being ignored by the people in power. The machine of accusation and execution has gained momentum, and it's crushing anyone who gets in its way. One day, they bring you back to the meeting house for another public examination. You can barely walk. Your injuries from weeks of torture make every movement agony. But they force you to stand in front of the same crowd that condemned you before. You look out at the faces in the audience. Some of them look uncomfortable now. Some of them seem to be having second thoughts about what they've witnessed. But most of them still look convinced that you're guilty and deserve whatever's happening to you. The accused has maintained her lies despite extensive examination, Reverend Paris announces. She refuses to confess. She refuses to seek redemption. She persists in claiming innocence despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. Because I am innocent, you say. Your voice is barely audible, but the room is quiet enough that everyone can hear you. Innocence is no longer a possibility, he replies. The evidence is too strong. The testimony is too compelling. The physical examination has revealed too many signs of supernatural influence. Then your evidence is wrong, you say. A murmur goes through the crowd. Even after everything they've done to you, you're still defying them. You're still refusing to give them what they want. The court finds the accused guilty of witchcraft, Reverend Paris announces. The sentence is death by hanging. The execution will take place tomorrow at sunrise. There's a cheer from the crowd. Some people seem genuinely excited by the prospect of watching you die. Others look relieved that the long process is finally coming to an end. A few look troubled, but they don't speak up. You're dragged back to your cell. This time they don't bother with restraints. You're too weak to escape, and you have nowhere to go anyway. They just lock the door and leave you alone with the knowledge that you have less than 24 hours left to live. You sit on the bench and try to come to terms with your approaching death. You're going to die for crimes you didn't commit. You're going to be executed based on evidence that was manufactured and testimony that was coerced. You're going to become another victim of mass hysteria and judicial corruption. But you're also going to die with your integrity intact. You never confessed to crimes you didn't commit. You never gave them the satisfaction of breaking your will completely. You never betrayed your own sense of truth and justice. That has to count for something. Even if no one else recognizes it, even if history records you as just another executed witch, even if your name becomes synonymous with evil and supernatural corruption, you know the truth. And maybe that's enough. As the night passes, you think about your life, about the simple pleasures you'll never experience again, the taste of fresh bread, the warmth of sunlight on your face, the sound of birds singing in the morning, the feeling of clean clothes against your skin. You think about the life you might have had if you'd been born in a different time or place, a time when knowledge wasn't suspicious, a place where competence wasn't evidence of supernatural influence, a world where being different didn't make you a target for elimination. You think about all the other women throughout history who have died for similar reasons. Women who were too smart, too independent, too successful, too threatening to the established order. Women who were eliminated not because they were evil, but because they were inconvenient. You're part of a long tradition of scapegoating that stretches back through centuries and will probably continue for centuries more. Humans need someone to blame when things go wrong. They need someone to punish when life becomes too difficult to bear. They need someone to eliminate when fear becomes stronger than reason. You just happen to be available when Salem needed a scapegoat. As dawn approaches, you hear activity outside. People are gathering for your execution. You can hear voices, footsteps, the sound of wood being moved around. They're building a gallows. They're preparing for a public spectacle that will serve as both entertainment and warning. The door opens one last time. The constable enters with several guards. They're here to escort you to your death. Time to go, the constable says. He doesn't sound happy about it. He sounds like a man who's doing an unpleasant job that someone has to do. You stand up. Your legs are shaky and weak, but they hold your weight. You walk to the door without resistance. There's no point in fighting now. There's nowhere to run and no way to escape what's coming. They lead you up the stairs and out into the morning air. The first thing you notice is how bright the world seems after so many days in the dark cell. The second thing you notice is how many people have gathered to watch you die. It seems like the entire village is here, plus people from neighboring towns who have come to witness the execution of a witch. They're arranged in a rough circle around a wooden platform that's been hastily constructed in the center of the village. On the platform is a gallows, a simple wooden structure with a crossbeam and a rope hanging from it. The rope has been tied into a noose. It's waiting for you. You walk through the crowd toward the platform. Some people spit at you as you pass. Others make the sign of the cross. A few call out insults or accusations. Most just watch in silence. You climb the steps to the platform. Each step is an effort. Your injured body protests every movement. But you force yourself to walk upright, to maintain whatever dignity you can in these final moments. Reverend Paris is waiting on the platform. He's holding a Bible and wearing his most solemn expression. He's here to offer you one last chance at redemption and to pronounce the official justification for your execution. Do you have any final words? He asks. Any last confession? Any final plea for God's mercy? You look out at the crowd, at the faces of people you've known for years, people you've helped, people you've trusted, people who are now eager to watch you die. You could confess now. You could give them what they want. You could admit to crimes you didn't commit and ask for forgiveness for sins you never committed. It wouldn't save your life, but it might save your reputation. It might prevent your name from being remembered as that of an unrepentant witch. But confessing now would make everything you've endured meaningless. It would validate the entire corrupt process. It would suggest that torture and coercion and mass hysteria are acceptable ways to determine guilt and innocence. I am innocent, you say. Your voice carries clearly across the crowd. I have never practiced witchcraft. I have never made any pact with Satan. I am dying for crimes I did not commit. There's a murmur from the crowd. Some people seem surprised that you're maintaining your innocence even now. Others seem angry that you're still defying their judgment. You persist in your lies even at the moment of death, Reverend Parris says. May God have mercy on your soul. The executioner approaches. He's a large man with rough hands and an apologetic expression. He's done this before, but he doesn't seem to enjoy it. He positions the noose around your neck. The rope is rough against your skin. Any final words? He asks quietly. You think about what you want your last words to be. What message you want to leave for anyone who might be listening. What truth you want to speak into this moment of organized madness. I forgive you, you say. Not loudly enough for the crowd to hear. Just loudly enough for the executioner and Reverend Parris to hear. I forgive all of you. You don't know what you're doing. The executioner nods slightly. Maybe he appreciates the gesture. Maybe he recognizes the injustice of what's happening. Or maybe he's just acknowledging that you've spoken. He steps back and pulls the lever that releases the trapdoor beneath your feet. You fall. The rope catches you. Your neck snaps. The pain is brief and intense, and then nothing. You're dead. The crowd cheers. Some people seem relieved that it's finally over. Others seem excited by the spectacle. A few look troubled, but they don't speak up. Your body hangs from the gallows as people gradually disperse. Some stay to stare. Others hurry away as if they're afraid that looking too long might somehow implicate them in what just happened. Eventually, even the watchers lose interest and wander away. Your body is left hanging alone in the center of the village, a warning to anyone else who might be tempted to practice witchcraft or display unusual knowledge, or threaten the established order in any way. Hours pass. The sun moves across the sky. Birds land on the gallows and then fly away. Life goes on around your corpse as if nothing significant has happened. Finally, as evening approaches, someone cuts you down. They don't do it out of respect. They do it because leaving bodies hanging indefinitely is unsanitary and might attract scavengers. They bury you in an unmarked grave outside the village boundaries. You're not allowed to rest in consecrated ground because you died as an unrepentant sinner. Your grave is unmarked because no one wants to remember where a witch is buried. Your possessions are burned. Your house is torn down. Your name is struck from official records. It's as if you never existed, as if the village wants to erase every trace of your presence. But they can't erase the truth. They can't change the fact that you were innocent. They can't alter the reality that they killed an innocent person based on fear and superstition and manufactured evidence. Your death becomes part of a pattern. More people are executed in the following weeks and months. The hysteria continues to spread until it finally burns itself out. Eventually, people start to realize that something terrible has happened, that innocent people have died, that the system they trusted to protect them has been corrupted by fear and prejudice. Years later, some of the accusers recant their testimony. They admit that they lied. They acknowledge that they were caught up in mass hysteria and said things that weren't true. They express regret for their role in the deaths of innocent people. Years later, some of the judges expressed doubts about the trials. They acknowledge that the evidence was insufficient. They admit that the methods used were inappropriate. They suggest that mistakes were made. Years later, the families of the victims are offered compensation, small amounts of money that are supposed to make up for the loss of their loved ones, official statements acknowledging that errors occurred, formal apologies from the government. But none of that brings you back. None of that restores your reputation. None of that changes the fact that you died for crimes you didn't commit. Your story becomes a cautionary tale about the dangers of mass hysteria, about the importance of due process, about the need to protect individual rights even when communities are gripped by fear. But mostly, your story is forgotten. You become just another name in history books, just another victim of a dark period that people prefer not to think about too carefully. Except for the lesson. The lesson remains. The lesson that fear can turn neighbors into enemies overnight. That hysteria can override reason and justice. That ordinary people can become participants in terrible atrocities when they're convinced that they're protecting their community from danger. The lesson that being different is dangerous. That being competent can be fatal. That being knowledgeable can make you a target for elimination. The lesson that innocence is not always a protection, that truth is not always a defense, that justice is not always available to those who need it most. The lesson that systems designed to protect people can be corrupted and turned against them. That authorities who claim to represent God and law can become instruments of oppression and murder. The lesson that survival sometimes depends not on being good or right or innocent, but on being invisible, on blending in, on never standing out or threatening anyone, or displaying abilities that might be interpreted as supernatural. These are hard lessons, uncomfortable lessons, lessons that challenge our faith in human nature and social institutions, lessons that suggest that civilization is thinner and more fragile than we like to believe. But they're important lessons, necessary lessons, lessons that might help prevent future tragedies if enough people learn them and remember them and apply them when they see signs of mass hysteria beginning to develop. Your death was meaningless in the context of your own life. You gained nothing from maintaining your innocence. You achieved nothing by refusing to confess. You accomplished nothing by dying with integrity intact. But your death might have meaning in the context of history. It might serve as a warning. It might help others recognize the signs of organized madness and resist participation in similar atrocities. That has to be enough, because it's all there is. So you wake up in 2025, in your heated apartment, with your smartphone and your indoor plumbing and your legal system that, while imperfect, at least requires actual evidence before condemning people to death. You wake up in a world where being knowledgeable about herbs doesn't make you a witch, where being good at predicting weather doesn't make you supernatural, where being competent doesn't make you a target for elimination. You wake up in a world where torture is illegal, where confessions obtained through coercion are inadmissible, where you have the right to remain silent and the right to legal representation and the right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. You wake up in a world where mass hysteria still happens, but where we have institutions and safeguards designed to limit its damage, where we have historical precedents to warn us about the dangers of mob justice and scapegoating. It's not a perfect world. Innocent people still suffer. Justice is still sometimes denied. Fear and prejudice still influence human behavior. But it's a world that learned something from Salem. A world that decided that torturing confessions out of innocent people was not an acceptable way to maintain social order. A world that recognized that being different or knowledgeable or competent should not be capital crimes. You survived the night in Salem by dying, by refusing to compromise your integrity even when the cost was your life, by maintaining your innocence even when truth offered no protection. You wouldn't last a day accused of witchcraft in Salem because the system was designed to ensure that no one lasted. Because the trials were not about determining guilt or innocence, but about finding scapegoats for community problems. Because survival depended not on being innocent, but on being invisible. But you did last. In a way. Your story lasted. Your example lasted. Your refusal to surrender to organized madness lasted. And maybe that's the most important survival of all. The survival of the principle that truth matters, that integrity matters, that some things are worth dying for, even when dying accomplishes nothing immediate or obvious. You close your eyes and pull your blanket closer. Your apartment is warm. Your bed is comfortable. Your tomorrow is full of possibilities that don't include being accused of supernatural crimes. You're safe in a way that people in Salem in 1692 could never be safe, protected by centuries of legal and social progress that they died to make possible. Sleep well. Dream of a world where being smart doesn't make you suspect, where being different doesn't make you dangerous, where being yourself doesn't require courage that most people don't possess. Dream of justice, even when it comes too late to save the innocent, especially then. Because someone has to remember, someone has to learn, Someone has to ensure that the lessons written in blood are not forgotten when the blood dries and the gallows are torn down and the graves are overgrown with grass. Someone has to remember that they were people. Real people with hopes and fears and dreams and plans for tomorrow. People who didn't deserve what happened to them. People whose only crime was existing in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong combination of knowledge and independence and refusal to surrender their sense of truth. Someone has to remember that it could happen again, that the mechanisms that enabled Salem still exist in human nature and social systems, that fear and scapegoating and mob justice are always lurking beneath the surface of civilization, waiting for the right conditions to emerge. Someone has to remember that preventing future Salems requires constant vigilance, active resistance to mass hysteria, commitment to protecting the rights of individuals even when communities are convinced that those individuals are dangerous. Someone has to remember that the price of justice is eternal attention to injustice, that the cost of freedom is perpetual defense against those who would take it away in the name of safety or order or community protection. Remember Salem. Remember the innocent who died there. Remember the lessons their deaths taught us. And remember that forgetting those lessons makes their deaths meaningless and makes future tragedies inevitable. Good night. Sleep well. Wake up grateful for the world you live in and determined to protect it from the forces that destroyed Salem. Because someone has to remember, and that someone is you.